Effective content and a solid content strategy has been a priceless asset in recent times. Getting your customers to where they need to be and providing them with the content that gets them to sign up, resolves their query or click purchase quickly is imperative. It's what the modern day customer has come to expect. To date, our What If webinars have featured Episerver's product manager, John Field, Mando's experience director, Jonathan Seal, and Mando's head of strategy and insight, Catherine Rigby, to name just a few. The conversations have been varied, covering topics like how to deliver effective personalisation, how to implement an effective digital roadmap, and digital platforms that make delivering content simple. They've been crammed full of insights and tips to take away and implement into your business. Here are some of our highlights from those episodes.
One of the changes is, people will take more chances based on what we just said. They will see what happens when they take a stand or create that content. But if we're going to, specifically us who are maybe opening Word documents and starting to create content every day, I think it's got to be and going to be more bite-sized, sort of chunkable, reusable. So it's not to say that long form doesn't have a place, and there's plenty of analytics out there to say, the top performing pages for Google are about 1,800 words long, etc. And the longer it gets, the fewer hits you're going to get. But the fact that you can start to create content that is designed to be broken out into multiple pieces, right? So whether it is that big white paper or ebook that becomes, each chapter can become a separate webinar or a separate video, and each article has very tweetable sections or whatever else it is. I think that's it's becoming on everyone's mind from that perspective. With Episerver, we're certainly looking both internally and with the products that we produce to be more data driven in those decisions. So, as I mentioned, not staring at the blank page and wondering what to do, to have a kind of idea about which way we should be heading to serve the audience. And again, with that authenticity, I think people are going to be more forgiving of less polished content. So not having to stay with an agent, design part of the agency or a graphic designer for weeks to make sure that it's pixel perfect, but speed and agility, getting it out there faster and before other people is going to be pretty vital in the years ahead.
Well, to understand the reason why it's such an obsession, if you like, with marketers, we need to understand what it is that's driving that, and it's very practical, tangible things underneath it that's driving it. Ultimately, marketers are looking at helping their businesses drive more revenue at lower cost to drive higher profits. That's the sort of the baseline that we're all kind of ultimately working to. So whether that's through higher engagement, whether that's through faster conversion process, the expectation is that personalization, if we get it right, is able to drive those outcomes. So the logic chain, I think, that's being followed here is pretty sound. It's that if you think about audience segmentation, you take a whole group of people, you say, if I'm able to look at this group differently to this group, and there's sufficient differences between them, and I can talk to that group in a more coherent way, and then that group in a more coherent way, I should get a better outcome. That's driven, segmentation for years in traditional marketing. So personalization is about taking that further and saying, okay, if I understand the audience more and more and more, I can adjust my messaging, I can adjust my tactics, I can adjust my offers, even my products that I kind of create in a way that's more appropriately tailored to that audience. And as we get down and down and down, we get to the point where we're talking to an audience of one. And if I know that audience so well that I can communicate really clearly with them, then I should have a more effective way of interacting. And I suppose if we move even beyond that, the ideal is that we're then in this world of hyper-personalization or various different terms for it, when we're not just talking to that audience of one, we're talking to that audience of one at a moment in time, on a particular device, in a location, in a particular emotional context or a social grouping or whatever, so that we can tailor it and hone it so it's as effective as possible. So that's why it's really attractive, because the idea is we can begin to address that problem that's been there for a really long time, which is that if you were interacting with me, if you had a shop, say, and I came into your shop, you could very easily size me up very quickly and say, okay, I can see that this person's about this old, they're probably in this kind of demographic group because of the clothes they're wearing. And, you know, as soon as I open my mouth, you could get more information about me. If I visited beforehand, you could tell more about me again. All that's really, really powerful for being able to tailor the experience that you give, and hopefully end in a better conversion process, or whatever you're trying to get out of that interaction.
I think one of the more significant advancements has really come outside of technology. If you think in recent years, even recent months, it's about the humanizing of the content, and in fact your brand, really, to find the authenticity and the empathy, specifically, you know, in COVID times, and you know, the social upheaval that's happening around the world, that, you know, that people can find belief in brands, and you need to try and find you know, your people that agree with that. And I think that's one of the things that's been happening in recent years, recent months, is that the brands are finding a voice and finding a stand. They're not necessarily just producing content about their products, right? They have a stand and they'll find their people. The cynics might say that is just, you know, grabbing the attention at a specific time. But I think that advancement in content marketing is you know, that empathy and humanizing and finding a stand to find the right people for your brand. You know, that we're all in this beyond the job. We turn up every day.
I think it's about being much more intentional about what we mean by personalization, and focusing on the kinds of personalization that actually will add value to our organization. Because we're not all Amazon, we're not all Spotify. You know, we have different kinds of organizations with different challenges. So I suppose in this context, and certainly with the kinds of organizations that we deal with, typically, you know, utilities, financial services, I'm more interested in the sort of more explicit personalization. I'll come on to what I mean by that, and a little bit less interested in all the sort of algorithms and that side of things, because you can do a lot with just asking customers what they want you to personalize on the basis of. So there's a concept which is sort of emerging of zero-party data. So as marketers, you'll be very familiar with the terms of your first-party data and second-party data and third-party data, where and they've all got different challenges and joys about them. So first-party data are collected on my own site. I know how you're browsing, how you're behaving, what you're buying, that kind of thing, because I've stored it myself. I've understood what you're doing. I might not understand exactly why you're doing it, but I can at least get a picture of what you do. So that's one. Second-party data, then sort of partners, affiliates that I'm interacting with directly. Maybe I'm part of a group structure, and so, you know, you've browsed on another partner website to do with that group. All good. Third-party data becomes problematic because we've got all the GDPR issues. A lot of the time it's purchase data, it's aggregated, sometimes it's built up from algorithms themselves, which got loads of bias and issues baked into it that isn't particularly right. So sometimes that can cause problems. And the reason that zero-party data kind of gets away from that is it's focused much more on saying, if you give us this information, we will give you this thing in value exchange in return. Yeah. And it's really clear and really controlled by the customer to say, I am willing to give you my email address on the basis that you're going to use it to personalize my experience on the site and send me this white paper that I want to receive. It's almost like a contractual trade. So it becomes a lot cleaner from sort of GDPR and data protection purposes, because you're not sort of saying, I'm spying on you and I'm trying to gather as much as I can about you. You're being very open about it, very transparent, and saying, I think there's value in you giving me this and I'll give you this. Are you up for that? Great. Yes, let's carry on. So I think there's some interesting work that's being done on zero-party data and looking at that. So yeah, for example, anything where you're explicitly asking for a response, like a survey or a questionnaire, or even just saying, if you choose this navigational option, you're going down this route and we're going to use it to personalize the rest of your experience on the site. That's a way you can do the same kind of principle. And it's subtly different to first party, but I think it's a more probably realistic and approachable way of tackling personalization as a starting point than I think trying to throw everything into some kind of clever, intelligent engine and hope it comes up with something good.
So there you have it, the highlights so far from our What If webinar series that have covered content strategy. If you would like to catch up on any of our previous episodes, you can find them on the News and Insights page of our website at mando.agency and on the Mando YouTube and Vimeo channels. We hope to see you attending a What If webinar in 2021 and gaining valuable insights from a range of professionals striving to improve customer experiences using digital channels.